Okay, for today's lesson, we'll be working in the math help class again. So that's just in my math work. I know some of the stuff we've done hasn't actually been math related, but we're just slowly building towards a final design. And we're going to build towards that today. So I'm just starting fresh again. So I got my math help class. The only thing I've written is public class math help. All right, so in this kind of unit study is all about classes and methods and scanners. So let's import java.util.scanner. So as I mentioned in the last lesson, java.util, is a package of classes. It is most definitely the second most popular package in Java that we'll use. The first most popular is java.lang, and every class in java.lang is automatically imported to make things easier. But if it's in util, we need to import it. Okay, we're going to write what's called a main method. We talked in our last lesson about how when you run a program not in a development suite like BlueJ, you have to have an entry point for the program. As software developers, we have the right to run and select different things that we want and test it out in BlueJ. But if we were to make this into an executable file that could be used on someone else's computer, we have got to have a main. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We don't need to have a main in every class, just what's the driver of our program. And it's public static void main string args. So that is what your computer will look for. It's looking for these exact words. Public, because all our methods should be public. Void, because it doesn't return anything. And it has to be main and take an array of string type. We won't be using this, but it has to be there. And finally, we have that word static. Static means it belongs to the class. So if I compile this and I go over to my math work, I can make a new math help. Even though I don't have a constructor here, Java makes one for me. So I can always make one. And it puts an instance of the class here, but notice I don't have main here. Because main doesn't belong to an object. It's not an object method. It's a class method, so I have to call it on the name of the class. And if you're coding, it would be like this, mathhelp.main. Then I have to give it a string array. All right, so back to this. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a class that can be used to help us with math. So we're going to say scanner, and we're making a scanner object. Anytime you make an object in Java, first thing you have to do is make a variable. When you make a variable, you got to tell Java what type of variable it is. I'm saying, Java, I want this to be a scanner. Now I get to pick an identifier name. Or variable name is another word for that. I'm going to call it KB for keyboard. When I'm scanning files, I say file. If I'm scanning like an object stream, which is a little more advanced, it would be different. All right. And I'm going to call the constructor for scanner. So it looks like that. Now the scanner constructor, you have to tell it in your parameter or argument, whatever it is inside the parentheses, you need to tell Java what you want to scan. And I'd like to scan the keyboard, which is called system.in. You're probably familiar with system.out. That's for printing out. System.in is for taking in. Okay. We're going to kind of start by doing a couple of methods that we did, a couple of operations that we did in the last lesson, but we're going to refactor it. We're going to do it a little better. So I'm first going to say system.out.println begin area of rectangle. And now we're going to ask the user for a length and width. So every time we get information from the user, it involves two steps. First, we prompt them, and then we input from them. So now I'm going to input. I'm going to be taking in a number. We have two choices, double or int. The best choice is double, because by using double, we are now going to allow the user to enter either whole numbers or decimals. If we say int and they want to enter a decimal, it won't work. So double is going to be much more flexible of our program. And I'll just call it len. And I have to input. And the way I input is I call on my scanner. My scanner object is called KB. And I'm calling a method. All right, so before we go any further, I wanted to just go over the methods available to us in the scanner class, and I'll post this in the Google Classroom. So if you're scanning a keyboard, you're really only going to be using these methods here. Scanner.next returns the next word as a string. So if they say their name is Mickey Mouse, and you say scanner.next, you're only going to get Mickey. But you can then call scanner.next again and get mouse. So you can do that. Scanner.nextInt will scan the next number as an integer, but it will error if the next item is not an integer. Scanner.nextDouble. And this scanner, by the way, what I'm saying there is, suppose we've made an instance of the scanner class and called it scanner. For our code right now, we made an instance, we called it KB, all right? So it'd be KB.nextInt. All right. NextDouble returns the next real number as a double, although this will error, okay? This will error if the next number is not a real number, so you got to be careful. And that error will shut down your program. Scanner.nextBoolean returns the next Boolean as a Boolean, obviously. But it will error if the next item is not literally the words true or false. It has to be true or false. Anything else, and it would error. Scanner.nextLine, we saw that one. That returns the entire line. So if they say, hello, my name is Judd Wilshire, and you say scanner.nextLine, you're going to take in, hello, my name is Wilshire. So it's about where does it stop scanning. Scanner.next stops at a space bar. Scanner.nextLine stops at a return when they hit enter on the keyboard. All right, so we aren't there yet, but when we do get to scanning a text file, these things will be useful to us to see if the text file has more text to read. It's has next. You can also add some layer of safety, and you can check if the next thing is indeed a real number or an integer or a Boolean by using has next. So those will be really helpful to us as well. All right, so just kind of have that handy as you're solving these problems. All right, so back to this. We are going to scan in the next thing as a double. So we're going to say next double. Then we're going to print out system.out.println, enter a width. And I'll say double width. And I'll take in a double. Okay, so there's something bad about this code, though, and that is that we're doing what I call coding in the main. The main should really not do this. The main should be the driver of your program. It should not be the nuts and bolts of your program. Okay? So instead, we're going to take this code and we're going to put it in a different method. Okay? So I'm simply going to call let's call this method I don't know. What we're scanning a keyboard. I'll just say I'm going to call it run. All right. So I'm going to make a method called public static void run. And I'm just going to simply put all this in it. And I can leave this main method up here at the top, or I can do what I usually do, which is put it at the bottom. But Java does not care. Java does not care about the order that I put methods in. All right, I like that. That's a little bit cleaner. I've got public static void main that calls the run method. Okay? And you'll notice that my run method is static as well. And this is called a static context. So what does the word context mean? You may have heard your English teacher say, use your context clues. Now, that means, the words going on around you. What kind of situation are you in? Well, you notice I'm inside a static method. And this main method, has to be static because that's the rule. So I'm inside a static method. So I'm in a static context. So I can only call static methods in my class. If I'm in a non-static context, I can actually call either one. But static context, you can only call static. And we know to call a method that I wrote, I just say the name. But now we're learning that if you're inside a method that's static and you call that method, it's got to be static. There's a way around that. We'll talk about it later. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to write I'll keep this method at the top because it's kind of our driver. I'm going to add some helper methods. Public static void get area rectangle, which I'll say just rect. Now I need two parameters for my area of a rectangle. That'll be a length and a width. And I'm going to make them doubles. And I'll say double length, double width. Now you might wonder, wait a minute, didn't we already use a variable width? Well, where did I declare it? I declared it inside run. So this variable has a lifespan that dies right here at that curly brace. So it's totally available to me to use it somewhere else as long as I do it in a local context again. So as an argument or parameter, it's a local context. So what would get area do? Oh, you know what? We said void, and it shouldn't be void. We're going to say double. This word means what we return. We're going to return a double. So the area of a rectangle is length times width. So I'm going to return length times width. Okay, so now that we used our run program to scan in a len and width, I'm going to call this method. I'm going to say double area R. I'm going to say get area rect, and I'll send it len and width. So let's talk about what happens here. First of all, we're still in a static context. So I had to make this method static. I'm calling get area rect with a length, which will go here. So I'm basically renaming len, length, which is fine, and width, which will go here and be renamed the same thing. But I want you to understand that these variables here are what I'm sending. These variables here are what I'm catching them with. So you got to have like a catcher's mitt, to catch the ball when it's thrown to you. I got to have something to catch length. So I do it here, and I have to tell Java it's a double, and I do it here, and I have to tell Java it's a double here. I catch it, and then I say length times width, and I return it. And it's good. When I return it, I have to have, because I'm returning it, I got to have something to catch it. So area R is catching what this returns. So we're going to scan in a length from the user. We're going to scan in a width from the user. We're going to send it to the get area rect function there and there. getAreaRect catches it here and here, multiplies them, and then returns it, which is stored finally in the area R. And let's print it out. Compile. And I'll right click, and you'll notice that we have lots of methods now. We can actually just directly access run. Well, that's because we're in a development suite. If I made these methods private, they actually wouldn't show up here. But yeah, we're in a development suite right now. I can actually call getAreaRectangle and send it a length and width. So why does BlueJ do this? This is so we can test each of our methods. Makes sense, right? Because we're developers. We need to have extra tools. But if we make this into a project by saying create jar file, then it's an executable that can be run on someone's computer. It's just going to run main. So let's run that to test it. All right, brings up our console. Let's enter a length. I'm going to say 19.3. Enter a width, 21.2. And the answer is 409.16, which is correct. So your first task, don't erase this, okay, is, I'll just separate this with a line of comments there. I'll say 2 comments and then, there we go. Your task here is I want you to scan in the necessary information to find a circle, to describe a circle. Then I want you to write 2 static methods, one for get the area of a circle. And, if you don't know the formula, then look it up. And the other one to do get circumference. Of a circle. So that's going to be our circle work there. And then after that, I want you to ask about a right triangle. I want you to get the base and height. And I want you to write 2 more functions there. I want you to write get perimeter try, get area try. The perimeter is add the sides. The triangle's area is 1/2 times base times height. But you can't do this. You can't say 1 divided by 2 because that would give you 0. And lastly, I want you to go ahead and write the get perimeter rect and test each one of them. So make sure you go back and add that for the rectangle one, a call. And I need you to call the function, the method, catch what it returns, and print it out. And you'll have to make each one of these methods static because we're in a static context. So that's what I would like for you to do right now and then turn it in when you're done.